You've been lied to about your retirement number, not by accident, by math that was never designed for someone like you. The save 25 times your expenses rule is everywhere. Every personal finance channel, every Reddit thread, every coworker who just discovered index funds. And here's the thing, it's not wrong. It's just wildly incomplete. And depending on your situation, following it could leave you working an extra decade you didn't have to. And if you're watching this video, you're probably not planning to quit at 65. You're thinking 45, maybe 50, and it's possible. This video is about the exact calculations that change that. We're talking IRS rules most people have never heard of, a Morningstar update that almost nobody in the FIRE community is talking about correctly, and a strategy that could cut your required portfolio nearly in half. I've gone through the actual 2026 data, the tax brackets, the withdrawal rates, the subsidy thresholds, and I'm going to walk you through the math that most creators either don't know or don't want to spend the time explaining. Here's what we're covering. Why the number you've been told to hit is probably wrong, the legal tax rate that lets you pay zero on your investment income, the IRS loophole that unlocks your retirement accounts decades early, and the part-time income strategy that could replace a full-time salary when you add up what it's actually worth. Let's start with something that's going to reframe everything else in this video. Most people calculate their FIRE number based on their gross salary. They think, I make $80,000 a year, so I need $80,000 times 25, $2 million. And they spend years chasing that number, feeling like it's forever out of reach. Here's what that math is missing. When you stop working, you stop paying for work. Federal and state taxes on a salary that no longer exists. Gone. The 401k contributions you were making to build the portfolio you now have, gone. Commuting costs, work clothes, the $14 salads because you had 28 minutes for lunch, all gone. On an $80,000 salary, those work-related costs add up to roughly $34,000 a year, which means the actual income you need to replace isn't $80,000, it's $46,000. That single reframe cuts your FIRE number by nearly $1 million, and that's before we even talk about the withdrawal rate, which is where things get really interesting. Morningstar just updated their safe withdrawal rate recommendation for 2026, and almost nobody is reporting it correctly. The headline sounds great. They raised it to 3.9%, up from 3.7% in 2024, because bond yields are higher and equity valuations look more reasonable. Some people are running with that and saying the 4% rule is basically back. Here's the problem with that take. That 3.9% figure is built for a 30-year traditional retirement. You retire at 65, you need money until 95, done. But if you're watching this video, as I said before, you're probably not planning to quit at 65. You're thinking 45, maybe 50. That means a 40 to 60-year time horizon. And at that length, the math breaks completely differently. At a 4.5% withdrawal rate over 60 years, historical data shows roughly a 28% chance of running out of money. That's not a tail risk. That's a coin flip with worse odds. For early retirees, the more appropriate withdrawal rate is 3.25% to 3.5%, with some flexibility built in. So let's run the real numbers. Annual expenses of $60,000 at the standard 25 times rule gives you a target of $1.5 million. That's what everyone says. But $60,000 divided by 3.5%, the early retirement reality, gives you $1,714,286. That's a $214,000 gap that almost no mainstream content says out loud. And that's actually the second most important thing I'm going to tell you today. Because the most important thing is the strategy that makes your actual number dramatically easier to hit. There is a tax rate in the US tax code that most working people have never encountered. Not because it's hidden. It's right there in the IRS tables. They've just never been in a position to use it. It's the 0% federal long-term capital gains rate. For 2026, a single filer can earn up to $49,450 in taxable income and pay 0% federal tax on long-term capital gains. For a married couple filing jointly, that threshold is $98,900. And here's the part that makes this genuinely powerful. The standard deduction for married couples in 2026 is $32,200. That means you can have gross income of up to $131,100 as a couple before you lose the 0% rate entirely. Picture this. You're retired early. You have a $1.5 million index fund portfolio. Every year, you sell shares to fund your life. You and your spouse realize $80,000 to $98,000 in capital gains. After the standard deduction, your taxable income is well below the threshold. Federal capital gains tax owed, 0. Legally, permanently, every single year. Let that land for a second. A working couple earning $96,000 gross might net around $75,000 after a 22% effective tax rate. A retired couple living on $75,000 from their portfolio might owe nothing. Same lifestyle, completely different tax reality. This is why the income you need to replace is even lower than most people think, because the tax drag on investment income in early retirement is often near zero. But this only works if your money is in the right place at the right time. And for most people, it isn't. Here's the problem almost every aspiring early retiree runs into. They've done the right thing for 20 years. They maxed their 401k, they built a serious pre-tax portfolio, and now they want to quit at 48. And they look at their account balance and realize they can't touch it without a 10% penalty until age 59 and a half. That's where the Roth conversion ladder comes in. This is the strategy that the FIRE community knows and almost nobody else does, and it is genuinely one of the most powerful tools in this entire space. Here's how it works. Each year you convert a chunk of your traditional IRA or 401k into a Roth IRA. You pay ordinary income tax on that conversion, but at a rate that when optimized correctly can be as low as 6 to 8% effective. Then you wait 5 years. After 5 years, those converted dollars are available to you penalty-free at any age. The key number for 2026, the 12% federal tax bracket for married couples tops out at $100,800 of taxable income. Most FIRE practitioners fill that bracket with conversion income each year, keeping their effective rate in that 6 to 8% range after the standard deduction. Let's say you retire at 50 with $1 million in a traditional IRA. You convert $50,000 per year. You pay roughly $3,000 to $4,000 in taxes. After year 5, that first $50,000 batch is available penalty-free. Year 6 unlocks year 2. Year 7 unlocks year 3. You've built a perpetual tax-advantaged income stream that starts flowing at age 55, and it never stops. That's important. But if you don't also know what to do in those first 5 years while you're waiting for the ladder to mature, you're still stuck. There are actually 2 ways to access retirement money early without penalty. The Roth Ladder is the flexible, long-term play. The other one is called 72 TSEPP, substantially equal periodic payments, and the IRS literally built it as an early retirement escape hatch. Most financial content completely ignores this rule. Here's what it does. It lets you take penalty-free withdrawals from a traditional IRA or 401k before age 59 and a half, with no 5-year waiting period. You calculate a fixed annual payment using one of 3 IRS-approved methods, and you commit to taking that payment for at least 5 years or until you reach 59 and a half, whichever is longer. The catch: you cannot change the amount once you start. It's less flexible than the Roth Ladder, but it works immediately. For someone who retires at 52 with all their savings in pre-tax accounts and doesn't have 5 years to wait, this is the bridge. On an $800,000 IRA at age 52, using the fixed annuitization method at the current IRS applicable federal rate, you'd receive roughly $38,400 per year, penalty-free starting now. You just have to stay committed until 59 and a half. 2 tools. Same problem, different timelines. Knowing both of them means you have an answer no matter when you're reading this. But here's the thing. All of this assumes you actually need the full portfolio number. And there's a version of this where you don't. This is the concept I think is the most underexplained in the entire FIRE space. It's called Coast FIRE, and it changes the timeline in a way that feels almost illegal. Standard FIRE says, build the full portfolio, then quit. Coast FIRE asks a different question. What if you only had to get your portfolio to the point where, even if you never invested another dollar, compound growth would carry it to your full number by traditional retirement age? That's your Coast FIRE number, and it's shockingly achievable. Say your full FIRE target at age 65 is $1.25 million. That's $50,000 per year at the 4% rule. If you're 35 today, you have 30 years of compounding at 7%. Your Coast FIRE number at 35 is $1.25 million divided by 1.07 to the power of 30. That's $164,200. If you're 40, it's $232,800. Once you hit that number, you're done investing for retirement. You still need to cover your living expenses, but you no longer need to save for the future. That means you can take a lower-paying job you actually like, go part-time, move somewhere cheaper. The pressure is off. And speaking of moving somewhere cheaper, this is where the numbers get almost absurd. Geographic arbitrage sounds like something you do by moving to Southeast Asia, but you can do a scaled version of it entirely within the United States, and the math is wild. A remote worker keeping a San Francisco or New York salary while moving to Austin or Boise captures savings from 3 places simultaneously. State income tax, moving from California to Texas alone, saves roughly $9,500 a year on a $120,000 salary. Housing, often 40 to 60% cheaper, which on a typical Bay Area rent works out to about $14,400 a year in savings. And everyday costs, groceries, restaurants, services, all lower. Total annual savings redirected to investments, roughly $23,900 a year. Invested at 8% over 15 years, that's approximately $690,000 in additional wealth. Not from a raise, not from a promotion, not from starting a business, from a moving truck and a remote job. That's equivalent to a $23,900 annual raise every single year without working a single extra hour. And the savings rate math underneath all of this is even more explosive than most people show. Here's the mechanism that almost nobody explains properly. Your savings rate controls 2 variables at the same time. It controls how fast your portfolio grows, and it controls how small your FIRE number needs to be. Spend less, and you invest more, and need less forever. Those 2 forces compound on each other. On an $80,000 after-tax income, a 10% savings rate means you're investing $8,000 a year, living on $72,000, and your FIRE number at 25 times is $1.8 million. At 7% returns, you're looking at about 43 years. A 50% savings rate, $40,000 invested, living on $40,000. FIRE number drops to $1 million. Timeline, 17 years. Going from 10% to 50% doesn't just double your progress, it cuts 26 years off the timeline. That is the number that changes people's minds. If you're finding this useful, this is exactly the kind of math first breakdown I do every week. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment with your current savings rate. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps me know what to cover next. Now, there's one more strategy that I save for last because it is the most underrated exit ramp in this entire conversation. It's called Barista FIRE. And when you add up what it's actually worth in 2026, it replaces the equivalent of a full-time salary for most people. Here's the concept. Instead of fully retiring, you work part-time, enough to cover your basic living expenses. Your portfolio doesn't need to fund everything, so you need far less of it. Simple enough. But the real power is in the health insurance math. Early retirees who buy coverage through the ACA marketplace can qualify for enormous subsidies based on their income. And here's the key. Roth conversion income counts towards your modified adjusted gross income for subsidy purposes. So FIRE practitioners optimize their conversion specifically to stay below certain thresholds to maximize what they receive. For a couple in their 40s in 2026, the benchmark Silver Plan premium runs $18,000 to $24,000 a year without subsidies. At 300% of the federal poverty level, which for a couple is roughly $60,000 in income, your out-of-pocket premium drops to around $4,800 a year. That's $400 a month for employer-quality coverage. Now, the full picture. A couple earning $30,000 to $40,000 from part-time work covers their living expenses plus subsidized health insurance. The portfolio only needs to cover the gap. At a 3.5% withdrawal rate, the portfolio needed drops to roughly $571,000 to $800,000. Compare that to the standard advice of $1.5 million or more. You can leave the 9-to-5 with roughly half the portfolio, not by cutting corners, but by understanding how the system actually works. Let's bring this together. The 25 times rule was built for a 30-year retirement. If you're leaving early, your real number is closer to 28 to 30 times expenses. But your actual expenses are probably 30 to 40% lower than your salary once you stop paying for work itself. The 0% capital gains bracket means a retired couple can live on $75,000 a year and owe 0 federal tax on investment income, legally, every year. The Roth conversion ladder unlocks your pre-tax retirement accounts penalty-free starting 5 years after you begin converting. And the 72T rule does it immediately if you can't wait. Coast FIRE means you might already be closer to done than you think, because once you hit a number as low as $164,000 at age 35, compound growth does the rest. Geographic Arbitrage can add $690,000 to your wealth over 15 years without a single extra hour of work. And Barista FIRE with ACA optimization can cut your required portfolio nearly in half. None of this is a hack. None of it is a loophole in the shady sense. It's the math working exactly as designed, for people who actually understand it. The people who retire in years instead of decades aren't smarter than you. They just ran different numbers. Now you have them. If you want to go deeper on any of these, especially the Roth Ladder mechanics or how to actually model your own Coast FIRE number, I've got videos on both of those that will make this one click even harder. They're linked right here. Watch those next. And if this video did what I hoped it did, if it changed a number in your head or gave you a strategy you'd never heard before, share it with one person who's grinding away at a job they hate, thinking they have no choice, because they might have more options than they know. The math is on your side. You just have to use it.